The Montana Territory stretched endlessly in every direction, a white ocean of snow and silence broken only by the skeletal fingers of bare cottonwoods clawing at the gray December sky. The wind cut like knives across the open platform, carrying with it the promise of worse weather to come. This was the kind of cold that didn't just chill, it invaded, seeping through wool and leather and flesh until it found the bone. Eliza Vance had known cold before. Boston winters had their bite, their elegant cruelty dressed in gaslit evenings and frost-etched windows. But this was different. This was a cold that wanted you dead. She pulled her traveling coat tighter, fine wool entirely inadequate, already drawing stares from the handful of townspeople braving the depot. Her trunk sat beside her like an accusation, polished leather with brass fittings, the kind of luggage that announced money and breeding and a complete lack of understanding about where she'd landed. She might as well have worn a sign, "Not from here, does not belong." Rowan Hale stood 20 feet away, his back to her, talking to the station master. Even from this distance, she could read the tension in his shoulders, the rigid set of his spine. He was a big man, not fat, but solid in the way of someone who'd spent his life wrestling with livestock and weather and land that fought back. His coat was practical canvas, patched at one elbow. His hat was weathered, shaped by years and elements rather than any fashionable hand. He was nothing like Thomas. The thought came unbidden, and she shoved it away viciously. Thomas was dead. Thomas was why she was here, why she'd answered an advertisement in the Matrimonial Times with a lie about who she was and what she wanted. Thomas was why 3 hired guns were probably stepping off a train somewhere behind her, tracking her across half a continent. "Miss Vance?" She turned. A woman stood beside her trunk, wrapped in practical furs, her face weathered, but kind. 50, perhaps, with eyes that had seen enough to know trouble when it arrived wearing city clothes. "Mrs. Chen," Eliza said, remembering the name from the brief correspondence. The only other person in Coldwater Creek who'd known she was coming early. "I apologize for the confusion about the dates. There was a mix-up with the telegraph. No confusion on my end." Mrs. Chen's gaze was sharp, assessing. "Question is whether you want him to know you're here, or if you're planning to bolt back on that train before it pulls out." Eliza felt her careful mask slip. I run the boarding house. I see everything that happens in this town, including strange riders asking questions about new arrivals an hour ago." Mrs. Chen's voice dropped lower. Well-dressed men, Eastern accents, carrying more hardware than the law allows for social visits. The platform seemed to tilt beneath Eliza's feet. "Where are they now?" "Told them no train today, no passengers expected until tomorrow. They're at the saloon, warming up, asking more questions." Mrs. Chen nodded toward Rowan's back. "He's a hard man, Rowan Hale. Lost his wife 2 years back in childbirth. Raises his daughter alone, barely speaks to anyone in town unless it's about business. But he's honest. And he's tougher than he looks, which is saying something." "I can't bring this to his door," Eliza whispered. "I should leave." "And go where?" Mrs. Chen's laugh was sharp as the wind. "You think those men will stop looking because you run again? You think the next town will be any different?" She paused, her expression softening slightly. "Besides, you already sent the agreement. You already said yes. Rowan Hale is a man of his word. Question is whether you are." Before Eliza could answer, Rowan turned. Their eyes met across the platform. He was younger than she'd imagined, 35, maybe 40, though the lines around his eyes could have been from age or simply from squinting into too many harsh suns. His face was all angles, sharp jaw, prominent cheekbones, a nose that had been broken at least once. Not handsome in any conventional sense, but striking in the way of something carved by necessity rather than design. He stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he crossed the platform in long strides that ate the distance between them. "Eliza Vance?" His voice was rough, unused to gentleness. "Yes." She forced herself to stand straight, to meet his eyes. "Mr. Hale, I apologize for the early arrival. There was a change in schedule. You're here. That's what matters." He glanced at her trunk, and something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, maybe, or resignation. "That all you brought?" "I travel light." It was a lie. Everything she owned that mattered was in that trunk. Clothes, books, Thomas's journal with its damning evidence, the small derringer that had been her father's, and enough cash sewn into the lining to start over somewhere else if this went wrong. Rowan grunted, hefting the trunk as if it weighed nothing. "Wagons this way. We'll need to move fast if we want to beat the weather home." Home. The word felt foreign, impossible. Mrs. Chen touched Eliza's arm briefly. "Good luck," she murmured. Then even quieter. "I'll do what I can about your friends at the saloon. Buy you some time." Eliza nodded, not trusting her voice. The wagon was practical, scarred, built for work rather than comfort. Rowan loaded her trunk with efficient movements, then offered his hand to help her up. His grip was calloused, warm against her frozen fingers. She settled onto the bench seat, trying not to shiver too obviously. Rowan climbed up beside her, took the reins, and clicked his tongue. The horses, two sturdy bays that looked as practical and weathered as everything else in this territory, lurched forward. They rode in silence through the town. Coldwater Creek was barely a town at all, a main street of mud and frozen ruts, a dozen buildings huddled together as if for warmth, general store, saloon, boarding house, church with a crooked steeple. Everything looked temporary, as if the town itself might pack up and leave when the weather turned. Eliza caught glimpses of faces and windows, quick assessments and quicker judgments. The stranger, the outsider, the city woman who thought she could survive out here. They were probably right. "It's another hour to the ranch," Rowan said, breaking the silence. "Storm's coming in behind us. We'll make it, but it'll be close." "I understand." "Do you?" He didn't look at her, keeping his eyes on the rutted road ahead. "I mean no disrespect, Miss Vance, but you don't look like you understand much about what you've signed on for." She bristled despite herself. "I assure you, Mr. Hale, I'm quite capable." "Of what? Cooking over a wood stove, hauling water from a well, tending livestock in weather that'll freeze your fingers black if you're not careful?" Now he did glance at her, and his eyes were hard. "I needed a partner, not a decoration. I was clear about that in my advertisement, and I was clear in my response. You wrote that you were accustomed to hard work and simple living, that you sought a fresh start in the frontier." His tone made it clear what he thought of those words. What you didn't write was the truth. Eliza's heart kicked. "I don't know what you mean. You're running from something." It wasn't a question. "I've seen enough people come west trying to outrun their past to recognize the signs. Question is what you were running from and whether it's going to follow you to my door." For a moment, she considered telling him everything. The whole sordid truth, Thomas Blackwell, her late husband, the financial empire he'd helped build on fraud and blood, the ledger he'd kept, insurance he'd called it, documenting every crime, every bribed official, every life destroyed. The way he'd died 3 months ago, a supposed accident that she knew in her bones was murder. The men who'd come looking for that ledger the night of his funeral. But the words stuck in her throat, trapped behind years of careful breeding that said, ladies didn't speak of such things, that problems were handled quietly, that you never admitted weakness. "My past is my own," she said instead. "It won't touch you or yours." Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "That's a promise you can't make, but I suppose we'll find out soon enough." The town fell away behind them. The road, such as it was, became a suggestion through the snow, marked more by instinct than any visible path. The land opened up, vast and empty, rolling plains broken by distant mountains that looked like teeth against the sky. Eliza had never felt so small. "Tell me about your daughter," she said, desperate to fill the silence with something other than her own fear. Rowan's expression softened, just slightly. "Sarah, she's 7, smart as a whip, stubborn as a mule. Looks like her mother. And her mother died bringing her into the world." The words were flat, final. "Complications. We were snowed in, couldn't get to town for help. By the time I dug us out," he shook his head. "Sarah doesn't remember her. I've tried to tell her stories, but words never seem enough. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's the way of things out here. You survive or you don't. Catherine didn't, but Sarah did, and that's what matters." He paused. "She's shy around strangers. Might take time for her to warm up to you." "I understand." "Do you have experience with children? Another lie or the truth?" Eliza chose carefully. I helped raise my younger sisters. I know children can be, particular about new people in their lives. It was true enough. She'd been 15 when the twins were born, old enough to help her mother with the endless work of keeping them fed and clean and reasonably civilized. Old enough to learn that children saw through pretense faster than any adult. She'll test you, Rowan warned. She's had 2 years of having me all to herself. She's not going to give that up easy. I wouldn't expect her to. The wind picked up, carrying the first stinging bits of new snow. Rowan urged the horses faster. They rode in silence again, but it felt different now, less hostile, more watchful. Rowan kept glancing at the sky, calculating something she couldn't read. The temperature was dropping, the gray light fading toward an early dusk. There, Rowan pointed ahead. At first, Eliza couldn't see anything but snow and sky. Then the shapes resolved. A house, a barn, a few outbuildings clustered together like a small fortress against the emptiness. Smoke rose from the chimney, a thin gray line that meant warmth, safety, survival. It looked impossibly isolated. As they drew closer, Eliza could make out more details. The house was log construction, solid and practical, with a covered porch and shuttered windows. The barn was bigger, suggesting this was a working ranch with livestock to shelter. Everything was weathered but maintained, the kind of place that required constant attention to keep from being swallowed by the land. A figure appeared on the porch, small, wrapped in 2 large clothes. "Sarah," Rowan said quietly. "Remember what I said. Give her time." The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the house. Rowan jumped down, then turned to help Eliza. His hands were warm on her waist as he lifted her down, setting her carefully on the frozen ground. Sarah stood on the porch, watching. She was tiny for 7, all big eyes and tangled dark hair. She wore a coat that had clearly been made for someone larger, Rowan's probably, cut down. Her expression was solemn, assessing. "Sarah," Rowan called, "come meet Miss Vance." The girl didn't move. Rowan sighed, grabbed Eliza's trunk, and headed for the house. Eliza followed, acutely aware of Sarah's eyes tracking her every step. Up close, the girl looked even younger. Her face was thin, her hands red with cold despite the oversized mittens, but her eyes were sharp, intelligent, missing nothing. "Hello, Sarah," Eliza said gently. "I'm pleased to meet you." Sarah said nothing. "She talks," Rowan said, setting down the trunk. "Just not to strangers. Give her time." He unlocked the door, pushed it open. "Come on inside before we all freeze." The interior of the house was warm, heated by a fire in the main room's stone fireplace. The space was simple but clean. A central room with a kitchen area on one side, a table and chairs, a sofa facing the fire. Doors led to what she assumed were bedrooms. Everything was functional, masculine, bearing no trace of a woman's touch. Eliza stood awkwardly in the doorway, suddenly aware of how much of an intrusion she was. "I'll show you to your room," Rowan said. "It's not much, but it's private. You'll have space to settle in before—" He trailed off, seemingly unsure how to finish that sentence. Before what? Before the wedding? Before they figured out if this arrangement would work? Before her past caught up with her and destroyed everything? He led her down a short hallway to a small bedroom. It held a narrow bed, a dresser, a chair. A single window looked out over the snow-covered plains. The room was cold, but not freezing. Heat from the main fireplace didn't reach this far. "I'll bring your trunk in," Rowan said. "Supper's in an hour. Nothing fancy, just stew and bread. Sarah made the bread. She's good at it." He left before Eliza could respond. She stood in the middle of the small room, listening to his boots retreat down the hallway, listening to the whisper of wind against the window, listening to the silence of a life she didn't recognize. Then, carefully, she began to unpack. The stew was better than Eliza expected, rich with meat and vegetables, seasoned with herbs she couldn't identify. The bread was indeed excellent, clearly made by practiced hands despite Sarah's age. They ate in silence. Sarah sat next to her father, as far from Eliza as the small table allowed, watching her with those unsettling dark eyes. Rowan ate mechanically, efficiently, like a man fueling his body rather than enjoying a meal. Eliza tried to eat delicately, the way she'd been taught, but the food was hot and good, and she was hungrier than she'd realized. She finished her bowl before she thought to slow down. Rowan noticed. Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. "More?" he offered. Please. He ladled another serving into her bowl. At least you're not one of those city women who pretend she doesn't need to eat. I've never seen the point in pretending not to be hungry when you are. Sensible. He glanced at Sarah. You done? The girl nodded, pushed back from the table. Then get ready for bed. I'll be in to check on you in a minute. Sarah left without a word, but not before casting one more long look at Eliza. When she was gone, Rowan leaned back in his chair. She'll warm up, just needs time. I understand. This is a lot of change for her. For all of us. He studied her across the table. I know we need to have the practical discussion about arrangements. Eliza's stomach tightened. Arrangements? I'm not a romantic man, Miss Vance. This is a business arrangement. I needed help with the ranch and with Sarah. You needed a fresh start. I expect honesty and hard work. In return, I can offer shelter, protection, and a share in what I've built here. He paused. As for the other aspects of marriage, I won't press you. Not until you're ready, if ever. There are separate rooms. You'll have your privacy. The relief was so profound she almost gasped. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't expect romance. I buried that with Catherine. I don't expect romance, Mr. Hale. I expect survival. Something changed in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or respect. Then we understand each other. I believe we do. One more thing. His voice dropped lower. If whatever you're running from shows up here, I need to know. Not because I won't stand with you. I will, if it comes to that. But I need to know what I'm facing. For Sarah's sake, if nothing else. Eliza met his eyes. This was the moment. Tell him or lie. Trust or protect. There are men looking for me, she said quietly. Dangerous men. They believe I have something that belongs to them. Do you? Yes. And they'll kill you for it? If they can. Rowan nodded slowly, as if she'd confirmed something he already suspected. How many? I don't know for certain. At least 3, maybe more. And they know you're here? Not yet, but they will. They're methodical. They'll check every town, every arrival until they find me. How much time do we have? Days. Maybe a week if we're lucky. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood, crossed to a cabinet and pulled out a rifle. He checked it methodically, then produced a shotgun and a revolver. You know how to use any of these? Eliza hesitated, then nodded. My father believed women should know how to defend themselves. I'm not an expert, but I can shoot. Good. He set the revolver on the table between them. That's yours. Keep it with you. If trouble comes, don't hesitate. Out here, hesitation gets you killed. She picked up the gun. It was heavier than her Derringer, more substantial. The weight felt both threatening and reassuring. Tomorrow, Rowan said, we'll go into town. Make this official. If you're my wife, you've got legal protection. And if those men come looking, they'll have to go through me first. Mr. Hale, Rowan, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm telling. His voice was hard, final. I may not be romantic, but I don't abandon my own. And once we say those vows, you'll be my own. That means something out here. Eliza felt tears sting her eyes and blinked them back furiously. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because you told me the truth when you could have lied. Because you're willing to fight instead of just running. And because... He paused, looking away. Because I know what it's like to feel like the world's against you, and there's nowhere left to go. Catherine and I came out here with nothing but hope and stubbornness. I won't watch someone else get crushed by circumstances they didn't choose. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. If this goes bad, we might all end up dead. I know. Good. Then we understand each other. He headed toward the hallway, then paused. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Eliza sat alone at the table, the revolver in her hands, listening to the murmur of Rowan's voice from Sarah's room. A bedtime story, soft and gentle, nothing like the hard man who'd just armed her for war. Outside, the wind howled. The storm was here. And somewhere behind it, so were the hunters. She didn't sleep. In the small, cold room, Eliza lay in the narrow bed and listened to the house settle around her. Footsteps in the hallway, Rowan checking the doors, the windows, the creak of floorboards, the whisper of wind finding gaps in the walls. At midnight, she gave up pretending, rose, and pulled Thomas's journal from the bottom of her trunk. She didn't need to read it. She'd memorized the important pages weeks ago, during those first desperate days after his death. But holding it grounded her, reminded her why she'd run, why she couldn't stop running. J. Blackwell and Sons, established 1847. Respectable. Trusted. Built on the suffering of thousands. The journal was thin, unassuming, bound in plain leather. But its pages contained names, dates, amounts, bribes paid to senators, contracts manipulated, loans called in to destroy competitors, workers crushed, sometimes literally, in pursuit of profit. And worse, so much worse. Thomas had kept it as insurance. If anything happens to me, he'd told her once, this will protect you. They won't dare touch you if they know you have this. He'd been wrong. His death, a fall from his office window, ruled accidental by a judge on the payroll, had triggered a scramble. Not to protect her, but to find the journal before she could use it. She'd barely escaped Boston with her life. A sound from outside froze her thoughts. Horses. Multiple horses, moving fast. Eliza stuffed the journal under her pillow, grabbed the revolver, and crept to the window. 4 riders, dark shapes against the snow, circling the house at a distance. Not close enough to be an immediate threat, but close enough to be a message. We know you're here. She was halfway to Rowan's room when his door opened. He was already dressed, rifle in hand, face grim. You see them? He asked quietly. 4 riders, circling. 5. He nodded toward the back of the house. One watching the barn. They're scouting, figuring out the layout. They won't attack tonight. Not in this weather. But they'll come back. Then we leave at first light, get into town, make this legal, and figure out our next move. He studied her. You should try to sleep. I'll keep watch. I can't sleep. Let me help. He considered, then nodded. Take the window in the main room. I've got the front. You see anything move? You holler. They took up positions in silence. Through the frosted glass, Eliza watched the shadows circle, patient and inevitable as wolves. Dawn was hours away. The riders were gone by first light, but their tracks remained, a warning carved in snow. Rowan hitched the horses with grim efficiency, his movements sharp with controlled anger. Sarah appeared on the porch, wrapped in her oversized coat, watching everything with those 2 knowing eyes. Stay with Mrs. Chen today, Rowan told her. No arguments. Are they coming back? Sarah's voice was small but steady. Yes. Because of her? A glance at Eliza. Rowan knelt in front of his daughter. Because bad men do bad things, and sometimes good people get caught in the middle. But I won't let them hurt you, you understand? Whatever happens, you're safe. Sarah nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe him. The ride into town was tense, silent. Rowan kept the rifle across his lap, scanning the horizon constantly. Eliza watched the tree line, remembering Thomas's security detail. The way they'd moved, professional, patient, always 3 steps ahead. These men were the same. Worse, maybe. Because they weren't protecting anyone. They were hunting. Coldwater Creek looked different in daylight, smaller, more fragile. The buildings seemed to huddle closer together, seeking protection in numbers that weren't enough. Mrs. Chen met them at the boarding house, took one look at their faces, and simply held out her arms for Sarah. I need to see Judge Morrison, Rowan said. He's at the saloon, been there since yesterday. Mrs. Chen's expression was knowing. Those men you were worried about left town at dawn. Headed east. They'll be back, Eliza said. I know. Mrs. Chen touched Eliza's arm briefly. I hope you know what you're doing, child. So do I. The saloon was empty except for 2 men, a weathered bartender polishing glasses and an older man in a worn suit nursing coffee at a corner table. Judge Morrison looked like he'd been handsome once, before the frontier and whiskey had worn him down to essentials. Rowan. He rose, shaking hands. Heard you took a bride. Didn't waste time, did you? Can you marry us? Today? Morrison's eyebrows rose. That urgent? That urgent. The judge studied Eliza, his gaze sharp despite the lines around his eyes. You understand what you're doing, miss. Marriage isn't something to enter into lightly, especially out here where undoing it is next to impossible. I understand perfectly, Your Honor. And you're doing this of your own free will? No one's forcing you? Eliza met his eyes. I'm doing this to survive. That's my choice, freely made. Morrison nodded slowly. All right then, we'll need witnesses. Bartender, you willing to sign? Sure thing, Judge. Then let's make this official. The ceremony was brief, perfunctory, nothing like the elaborate wedding Eliza had endured with Thomas. The cathedral, the hundreds of guests, the suffocating weight of expectations. This was 4 people in a saloon that smelled of last night's whiskey, words spoken quickly and signed in a register that probably wouldn't survive the next fire. But when Morrison said, I now pronounce you man and wife, something shifted. A door closing behind her, a new door opening ahead. Rowan didn't kiss her. He simply nodded, shook Morrison's hand, and said, Thank you. Outside, the wind had picked up again, more snow coming. That's done, Rowan said. Now we figure out how to keep you alive. There might be a way. Eliza took a breath. But it's dangerous. And it'll make enemies of very powerful people. More powerful than the ones already trying to kill you? The same ones. But if we can get this information to the right people, journalists, honest lawmen, we can destroy them before they destroy us. What information? She told him. Not everything, not yet, but enough. Thomas's journal. The evidence it contained. The empire built on corruption that would collapse if the truth came out. Rowan listened in silence, his expression darkening. That's a hell of a secret to carry, he said finally. I know. And these men won't stop until they get it back or kill you trying. No. He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the frozen plains. Then, my barn, southwest corner. There's a loose board, space behind it. Hide the journal there. If something happens to you, I'll know where to find it. Rowan, do it. Tonight. And tomorrow, we start planning how to turn the tables on these bastards. His jaw set, hard as the frozen ground. I didn't survive 2 years alone out here just to roll over for some Eastern money men who think they can take whatever they want. Eliza felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope, maybe, or something like it. Thank you, she whispered. Thank me when we're still alive in a month. They collected Sarah from Mrs. Chen's and headed home through the building storm. The girl sat between them, silent and watchful, her small presence a reminder of what was at stake. The ranch appeared through the snow like a promise, shelter, warmth, a chance to catch their breath. But the tracks were still there, circling the house. And somewhere in the white distance, patient and inevitable, the hunters were waiting. The storm broke that night, wind howling like a living thing, snow coming down so thick you couldn't see the barn from the house. Rowan spent hours checking the livestock, making sure nothing froze, while Eliza attempted to cook supper and failed spectacularly. Sarah watched her burn the biscuits without comment. I'm not very good at this, Eliza admitted, staring at the smoking pan. Pa says practice makes better, Sarah offered, her first words to Eliza. That's a kind way to put it. Ma couldn't cook either, Pa said. Not at first, but she got better. Eliza knelt down so she was eye level with the girl. I'll try to get better too, but it might take a while. Sarah considered this seriously. Okay, but maybe I should make the biscuits tomorrow. That, Eliza said, sounds like an excellent plan. When Rowan came in from the cold, stamping snow from his boots, he found them working side by side. Sarah explaining the proper way to knead dough, Eliza following instructions with careful concentration. He said nothing, but something in his expression softened. That night, after Sarah was asleep, Eliza slipped out to the barn. The cold hit her like a wall, stealing her breath. She fumbled with numb fingers at the board Rowan had described, finally prying it loose. The space behind was dark, empty, perfect. She pulled the journal from inside her coat and placed it carefully in the hiding spot. Then she replaced the board, making sure it looked undisturbed. When she turned to leave, Rowan was standing in the doorway. It's done, she said. He nodded. Good. Now come inside before you freeze to death. That'd be a waste of a perfectly good wedding. It was the closest thing to a joke she'd heard from him. They walked back to the house together through the screaming wind, and for just a moment, Eliza let herself imagine this could work, that she could build something here, something real, something worth defending. Behind them, the barn held its secrets. Ahead, the house glowed with firelight, and somewhere in the darkness, the hunters were still coming. But tonight, just for tonight, she was safe. The first test came 3 days later, on a morning so cold the water in the basin had frozen solid overnight. Eliza woke to the sound of something shattering in the kitchen, ceramic meeting wood floor with violence. She threw on her robe and rushed out to find Sarah standing amid the wreckage of a mixing bowl, flour dusting the floor like fresh snow, her small face twisted with frustration. "I can't do it right," the girl said, her voice trembling. "Ma always made it look easy, but I can't remember how she did it. I can't remember her hands." Eliza knelt beside her, carefully avoiding the broken pieces. "What were you trying to make?" "Breakfast biscuits. Pa likes them, but I forgot. I forgot how much water and the dough's all wrong and—" Her voice cracked. "Hey." Eliza touched her shoulder gently. "It's all right. We'll figure it out together. You can't even make biscuits without burning them." "You're right. I can't. But you can. You just need someone to help you remember." She stood, brushing flour from her knees. "Get a fresh bowl. We'll start over." They worked in silence, broken only by Sarah's quiet instructions, the girl's confidence rebuilding as her hands remembered what her mind had forgotten. When Rowan came in from the morning chores an hour later, stamping snow from his boots, the smell of properly baked biscuits filled the kitchen. He stopped in the doorway, something unreadable crossing his face. "Sarah made them," Eliza said quickly. "I just helped measure." "They're perfect." Rowan's voice was rough. He crossed to Sarah, kissed the top of her head. "Your ma would be proud." The girl beamed, and for a moment the weight in the house lifted. But it didn't last. That afternoon, Eliza attempted to do laundry and nearly poisoned them all with lye soap mixed wrong. The evening meal was edible but barely, the meat tough as leather, the vegetables boiled to mush. She tried to mend one of Rowan's shirts and somehow made the tear worse. By the fourth day, she could feel the judgment settling over the house like frost. Not cruel, but present. The unspoken question that hung in every burned meal, every failed chore. What exactly was this woman good for? The answer, she was beginning to fear, was nothing useful at all. She'd been raised for drawing rooms and dinner parties, taught to embroider samplers and arrange flowers, and make polite conversation. She could quote Tennyson and play Mozart on the piano, and navigate a 12-course meal without using the wrong fork. Out here, those skills were worth less than nothing. They were evidence of her uselessness, her foreignness, her complete lack of preparation for this life. The town noticed. When Rowan took her to the general store for supplies, the conversations died as they entered. Eyes followed her, assessing, finding her wanting. The shopkeeper's wife was polite but distant, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Heard you're from back east," the woman said, wrapping their purchases with efficient movements. "Boston, is it?" "Yes." Eliza kept her voice neutral. "Long way to come. Must be quite a change for you." "It is." "Well," the woman's smile grew sharper, "I'm sure you'll adjust, or not. Frontier has a way of sorting out who belongs and who doesn't." Outside, Rowan loaded the supplies into the wagon with controlled violence. "Don't mind Martha. She's like that with everyone new." "She's right, though, isn't she? I don't belong here." "You're here. That's what matters." But his voice lacked conviction. That night, unable to sleep, Eliza found Rowan sitting by the fire, cleaning his rifle. He glanced up when she entered, but said nothing, just went back to his methodical work. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know this isn't what you expected." "Expected?" He laughed, bitter. "I expected someone who could survive out here. Someone practical, strong." He set down the rifle. "Instead, I got a woman who can't cook a meal without burning it, who nearly killed herself doing laundry, who looks at the land like it's a prison sentence." The words stung because they were true. "I'm trying," she said. "Trying isn't the same as succeeding. Sarah needs someone who can take care of her, teach her, help her grow up strong. The ranch needs someone who can pull their weight. I needed a partner, Eliza, not another mouth to feed." "Then why did you marry me?" "Because you were honest about being in trouble. Because I thought desperation would make you tough." He met her eyes. I was wrong. She should have been angry. Instead, she felt something harder, colder. You're right. I can't do any of the things you need. I wasn't raised for this life. I was raised to be decorative and obedient and utterly useless without servants to do the actual work. She straightened her shoulders. But I can learn. If you'll give me time. Time's a luxury we might not have. Those men are still out there. I know. He studied her for a long moment. All right. Tomorrow, you start learning. Really learning. No more pretending burned biscuits are good enough. No more half measures. Sarah will teach you cooking. I'll teach you the rest, livestock, repairs, everything you need to survive. But you'll work, harder than you've ever worked in your life. I will. And if you can't keep up, if you prove you're more liability than asset, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Eliza nodded. Understood. She went back to bed with her hands shaking, but not from fear, from determination, from the cold fury of someone who'd been underestimated her entire life and was tired of proving people right. Tomorrow, she'd start proving them wrong. The next morning began before dawn. Rowan shook her awake when the sky was still black, his expression brooking no argument. Get dressed, warm as you can. We're checking the herd. The cold outside was brutal, a living thing that clawed at exposed skin. Eliza followed Rowan through knee-deep snow to where the cattle huddled together for warmth, their breath steaming in the darkness. Count them, Rowan ordered. Every morning, you count. Make sure none wandered off, none are down. You see one missing, you track it. You see one sick, you separate it before it spreads to the others. Her fingers were numb within minutes, her face aching from the cold. But she counted. 37 head, all accounted for, all standing. Good. Now the chickens. The chicken coop was warmer, heated by the birds' bodies and banked straw. Rowan showed her how to collect eggs without getting pecked, how to check for signs of illness, how to measure feed. They're fragile, he said. Cold like this, they can die overnight if you're not careful. Every evening, you check their water hasn't frozen. Every morning, fresh feed, no exceptions. I understand. Do you? Because if these chickens die, we don't have eggs. No eggs means no baking, no protein when the hunting's bad, no trade goods for town. Everything connects out here. One failure cascades into others. The weight of responsibility settled over her shoulders like a physical thing. They moved on to the barn, checking the horses, the milk cow, the handful of goats that provided cheese and meat. Rowan explained everything twice, his patience thin but present. How to check hooves for stones and rot. How to spot colic before it killed. How to measure hay so nothing starved but nothing was wasted. By the time the sun rose, Eliza's hands were bleeding from rough work, her back aching, her legs trembling with exhaustion. Inside, Rowan said. You've got an hour to help Sarah with breakfast before we start on repairs. Repairs meant learning to patch the chicken coop where wind had torn boards loose, meant climbing onto the barn roof to check for damage, her fingers so cold she could barely grip the hammer, meant splitting firewood until her shoulders screamed and her palms blistered. Rowan worked alongside her, demonstrating once and then expecting her to match his pace. When she faltered, he didn't encourage. He simply waited, expression neutral, until she found the strength to continue. Sarah watched from the house, her small face appearing in windows like a ghost. At noon, they broke for a meal that Sarah had prepared, simple but edible. The girl said nothing, just set the plates down and sat at her father's side, watching Eliza with those measuring eyes. Thank you, Eliza said. This is wonderful. Sarah's expression didn't change. Pa says you're learning. I'm trying. Ma tried too, at first, then she got good at it. The girl's voice was carefully neutral. But it took a long time. I don't have a long time. I know. Sarah pushed food around her plate. The men came back last night. I saw them from my window. Rowan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What men? The ones in the dark coats. They were watching the house. 4 of them. They stayed until almost morning, then rode away when you got up. Eliza felt her blood turn cold. Why didn't you tell us? You were both asleep, and they didn't do anything, just watched. Sarah looked up, and her eyes were too old for her face. They'll come back, though. They always come back. Rowan pushed away from the table, crossed to the window. Did you recognize any of them? No, but one had a scar here. She touched her cheek. And they had lots of guns. Good girl. You did right to watch. But next time, you wake me. Understand? I don't care what time it is. Sarah nodded. Eliza's hands were shaking. They're getting bolder. Or more impatient. Rowan's jaw was set. We need to move faster. Get that information out before they decide watching isn't enough. I've been thinking about that. Eliza chose her words carefully. There's a journalist, Martin Cross. He exposed the railroad corruption in Illinois 5 years ago. If anyone would publish what's in that journal, it's him. Where is he? Denver, last I heard, or he was 2 years ago. That's 3 days' ride in good weather, a week or more in winter. Rowan turned from the window. And we'd need someone to make the trip who wouldn't be noticed. Someone these men aren't watching. I'll go. They both turned to stare at Sarah. No, Rowan said flatly. They're watching for her. Sarah pointed at Eliza. And they know you, but they don't know me. I could take a message. I'm small. I could hide. Absolutely not. I said no, Sarah. This isn't up for discussion. The girl's face closed down, but her eyes said the argument wasn't over. That afternoon, Eliza learned to shoot properly. Rowan set up targets in the snow, old bottles, chunks of wood, anything that would show a hit. He handed her the revolver, showed her the stance, the grip, the breathing. Don't jerk the trigger, squeeze, slow and steady. She fired. The shot went wide, kicking up snow 3 feet from the target. Again. She fired until her hands ached, until the report stopped making her flinch, until she could hit the bottles more often than she missed. Rowan was relentless, correcting her grip, her stance, her breathing, never satisfied. Why does it matter if I can shoot bottles? She finally asked, frustrated. If those men come, they'll be moving, fighting back. Because shooting moving targets starts with shooting still ones. Because muscle memory gets built in practice, not panic. Because the difference between hitting and missing might be the difference between living and dying. He reloaded the revolver, handed it back. Again. By sunset, she could hit the targets consistently. Not perfectly, but well enough. Good, Rowan said, his first word of approval all day. Tomorrow we work on moving targets, and on shooting when you're scared. How do you practice being scared? His smile was grim. Oh, I'll find a way. That night, Sarah approached Eliza while Rowan was checking the livestock one final time. Can I show you something? The girl asked. Of course. Sarah led her to the small room she used, barely larger than a closet, with a narrow bed and a trunk at the foot. From the trunk, she pulled out a wooden box, ornately carved. Ma's things, she said quietly. Pa doesn't know I kept them. He gave most away after she died. Said it hurt too much to see them. But I saved these. Inside the box, a hairbrush, a locket with a faded photograph, a pressed flower, a letter in elegant handwriting. She was beautiful, Eliza said, studying the photograph. Catherine Hale had been delicate, dark-haired, with Sarah's serious eyes. She was strong, too. Pa forgets that. He remembers her dying, but not how hard she fought to live. Sarah touched the locket gently. She would have liked you, I think. Once you learned to cook. Eliza felt tears sting her eyes. That's kind of you to say. It's true. She told me once that strength isn't about what you already know. It's about what you're willing to learn. Sarah closed the box carefully. You're willing to learn, even when it's hard, even when Pa's mean about it. He's not mean, he's honest. Same thing sometimes. The girl smiled slightly. But he's scared too. He doesn't want to lose anyone else, so he pushes hard, tests you, sees if you'll break. I won't break. I know, that's why I'm showing you this. Sarah pulled out a folded paper from the bottom of the box. Ma drew maps of the whole territory, every trail, every town, every safe place she knew. Pa thinks they're lost, but I saved them too. Eliza unfolded the paper carefully. The map was detailed, precise, marked with notes in Catherine's hand. Routes to Denver, safe houses, towns to avoid, resources. This is incredible. If you need to run, Sarah said quietly, or if you need to get a message somewhere without being followed, this will help. Ma always said a woman needs options, needs ways out that the men don't control. Your mother was very wise. She was. And she'd want you to survive, so I'm helping. Sarah's expression was fierce. Those men who are watching, they're bad, aren't they? Really bad. Yes. Then we fight them, together, all of us. Eliza pulled the girl into a hug, felt her small arms wrapped tight. Thank you for trusting me. You're family now, Sarah said simply. That's what matters. When Rowan came back inside, he found them sitting together, the map spread between them, planning routes and contingencies with the serious focus of generals preparing for war. He said nothing, but something in his expression softened. The attack came 2 nights later, brutal and without warning. Eliza woke to the sound of breaking glass and Sarah's scream. She grabbed the revolver, stumbled into the hallway in her nightdress, and nearly collided with Rowan. Stay with Sarah, he ordered, rifle already in hand. Lock yourselves in her room. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Rowan, go. She ran to Sarah's room, found the girl already barricaded behind her bed, clutching a knife that looked absurdly large in her small hands. What's happening? Sarah's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. I don't know, but we're safe. Your father will handle it. Outside, shouts, the crack of gunfire. A man's scream cut short. Eliza positioned herself between Sarah and the door, revolver raised, hands surprisingly steady. If anyone came through that door who wasn't Rowan, she'd shoot. No hesitation, no mercy. More shots. The sound of something heavy hitting the porch, running footsteps, then silence. It stretched, endless and terrible. Finally, Rowan's voice. Eliza, it's me. Open up. She unlocked the door with shaking hands. Rowan stood in the hallway, blood on his shirt. Not his own, she realized with relief. His expression harder than she'd ever seen it. They're gone. For now. He glanced at Sarah. You all right, sweetheart? The girl nodded, still gripping the knife. Good girl. Go back to sleep. I'll be right outside your door all night. What happened? Eliza asked when Sarah had reluctantly crawled back into bed. 3 men. Tried to come in through the kitchen window. I was waiting. His voice was flat, emotionless. Drove them off. But they'll be back. With more men next time. Did you? She couldn't finish the question. Kill them? 1, maybe. The others got away. He met her eyes. I told you I'd stand with you. I meant it. But this is war now, Eliza. Real war, and we're outnumbered. Then we need allies. Out here, there are no allies, just people trying to survive. Then we make them care about our survival. An idea was forming, desperate but possible. The town. If they knew what those men were really after, if they understood what's at stake, they'd turn you over in a heartbeat if it meant being left alone. Maybe. Or maybe some of them would fight. Because if these men can come for me today, they can come for anyone tomorrow. That kind of power doesn't stop with one target. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. You want to expose them, publicly, make it impossible for them to operate in the shadows. Yes. That'll paint an even bigger target on your back. The target's already there. This way, at least we choose the battlefield. He studied her, and something like respect flickered in his eyes. You're tougher than I gave you credit for. I'm terrified, but I'm also tired of running. All right then. He straightened, wincing slightly, a wound he wasn't mentioning. Tomorrow we go to town. We talk to Morrison, to Mrs. Chen, to anyone who will listen. We tell them the truth, and we ask them to stand with us. And if they won't, then we fight alone. But at least we'll have tried. The next morning, Coldwater Creek looked the same, frozen, hard, indifferent. But news of the attack had spread with the speed of winter wildfire. Eyes followed them as they rode in, wary and assessing. Judge Morrison met them on the courthouse steps, his expression grave. Heard you had trouble last night. 3 armed men tried to break into my home, Rowan said flatly. Drove them off, but they'll be back. You know who they're after? My wife. She's got information that some very powerful men want buried. Morrison's eyes sharpened. What kind of information? Eliza stepped forward. Evidence of fraud, bribery, murder. Enough to destroy a financial empire that's been operating with impunity for decades. They killed my first husband to keep it secret. Now they're trying to kill me. And you brought this to our doorstep. It wasn't a question, wasn't quite an accusation, just a statement of fact. Yes, she said. I'm sorry for that. But if we don't stop them here, they won't stop. This kind of corruption spreads. It finds new victims, new towns, new people to destroy. Pretty speech. But why should we care about Eastern business feuds? Because power like that doesn't recognize borders. Because the men who'll kill me today will buy your judge tomorrow, your sheriff next week, your town council next month. She met his eyes. Because evil unopposed becomes evil entrenched, and then none of us are safe. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. You know, Catherine used to say something similar, about fighting for what's right even when it costs you. He glanced at Rowan. Your first wife was a force of nature. Looks like you've got a talent for marrying strong women. Will you help us? Rowan asked. Depends. What do you need? Protection, witnesses, and a way to get this information to people who can use it. I might know some people. Federal marshals, journalists, prosecutors who aren't on anyone's payroll. Morrison descended the steps. But it'll take time, week, maybe 2. Can you hold out that long? We'll have to. Then let's make a plan. They spent the next hour in Morrison's office, laying out everything, the journal, the names, the evidence. Morrison listened with the focus of a man who'd spent his life weighing truth against lies, and when Eliza finished, he simply nodded. I'll send telegrams, carefully, to people I trust. But in the meantime, you need protection. More than just Rowan and a rifle. I can fight, Eliza said. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Can you now? Rowan answered for her. She can shoot, and she doesn't scare easy. But you're right. We need more. I'll talk to some of the ranchers, men who've been here long enough to understand what's at stake. Maybe we can organize a watch. Make sure you're not alone out there. It wasn't much, but it was something. They left Morrison's office to find a small crowd gathered outside. Townspeople, watching, waiting. Mrs. Chen stood at the front, her expression fierce. We heard, she said simply. About the attack, about what you're fighting. I'm sorry, Eliza began. I never meant to bring danger. Hush. We've all got pasts out here, all running from something or toward something or just trying to survive. Question is whether we help each other or turn our backs. She looked at the assembled crowd. I say we help. Who's with me? Silence. Long enough that Eliza's heart sank. Then a rancher stepped forward. Then another. Then a shopkeeper, a farmer, 2 women Eliza had never met. We stand together, one of them said. That's how we survive out here. Not everyone agreed. Some melted away, unwilling to risk themselves. But enough stayed. Enough to matter. Thank you, Eliza whispered. Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. Don't thank us yet. This is just the beginning. She was right. The war had only just started. The support lasted exactly 4 days before the first crack appeared. It started with the Hendersons, a farming family who'd pledged to help watch the roads into town. Their eldest son came to the ranch on a gray morning, his face pale beneath the grime. Pa says we can't do it anymore, Mom, he said, not meeting Rowan's eyes. Says it's too dangerous. Says those men came by yesterday, asked questions about who was helping you, mentioned our farm specifically, mentioned my little sisters by name. Rowan's jaw tightened. They threatened your family. Didn't have to threaten, just had to remind us what we had to lose. The boy was maybe 17, trying to be brave and failing. I'm sorry, Mr. Hale, we want to help, but I understand. Go home. Protect your family. After he left, Eliza found Rowan in the barn, slamming an axe into a chopping block with controlled fury. How many more do you think will break? She asked quietly. All of them, eventually. These men are professionals. They know how to apply pressure. He wrenched the axe free, swung again. Can't blame people for choosing their own families over strangers. So we're alone. We've always been alone. I just let myself forget that for a few days. The axe bit deep into wood. Morrison sent word this morning. His contacts in Denver want proof before they'll move. Actual documentation, not just our word, and they want it delivered in person. Then we deliver it. It's 3 days' ride minimum, in winter. Through territory those men are probably watching. He finally looked at her. It's suicide. So is staying here waiting for them to pick us off? Eliza crossed her arms against the cold. We need to be smart about it. Use the routes on Catherine's maps. Travel at night when possible. Make them think we're still here while we're actually gone. And leave Sarah alone? Mrs. Chen would take her. She's the only one in town those men haven't approached. The only one who seems genuinely fearless. Rowan was quiet for a long moment, the axe hanging loose in his hands. You're talking about splitting up, dividing our strength. I'm talking about survival. If we stay here together, we're sitting targets. But if one of us makes the run to Denver while the other stays visible, creates the illusion of routine, they'll know. The moment you leave, they'll know. Not if we're careful, not if we plan it right. He studied her, and she could see him weighing options, calculating odds, all of them bad. Finally, he sighed. All right, we plan, but we do it smart and we don't move until we're ready. Understood? Understood. That night, they spread Catherine's maps across the kitchen table while Sarah slept. The routes were detailed, marked with notes in a precise hand that spoke of careful observation and hard-won knowledge. She marked safe houses here, here, and here, Rowan said, pointing. Most are probably gone now, but some might still be viable. And she noted which towns have honest lawmen, which are bought, which to avoid entirely. This route. Eliza traced a line that curved north before cutting east. It adds half a day, but it avoids the main roads entirely. Uses hunting trails and old mining paths. Also uses passes that might be snowed in this time of year. Then we check them first, scout the route before committing. They worked through the night, planning contingencies for every possibility they could imagine. When dawn broke, they had something resembling a plan. Fragile, dangerous, but possible. The next morning, Eliza rode into town alone. It was a calculated risk. If the watchers saw her moving freely, conducting normal business, it might buy them time. And she had a specific purpose. Finding Mrs. Chen. The boarding house was warm, smelling of bread and coffee. Mrs. Chen looked up from her ledger, read Eliza's expression, and simply gestured toward the back room. Talk, she said once the door was closed. Eliza laid it out quickly. The plan, the risks, the need for Sarah to be somewhere safe while they made the run. Mrs. Chen listened without interrupting, her weathered face unreadable. When Eliza finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You know, this is probably a death sentence, she said finally. I know. And you're doing it anyway. I don't see another choice. There's always a choice. You could run, disappear, leave the journal buried and start over somewhere they'd never find you. Until they did. And they would eventually. Men like that don't stop. Eliza met her eyes. I'm tired of running, Mrs. Chen. I'm tired of being afraid. I want to fight back. Even if it kills you? Even then, at least I'd die standing up. Mrs. Chen smiled, sharp and approving. Catherine said something similar once, about why she came west with Rowan when everyone told her she'd die out here. Said she'd rather risk death on her own terms than accept life on someone else's. She stood, crossed to a cabinet, and pulled out a rifle. I'll keep Sarah safe. You have my word. And if those men come for her, they'll have to go through me first. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just come back alive. That girl's already lost one mother. She doesn't need to lose another. The words hit Eliza like a physical blow. Another mother. Was that what she was becoming? What Sarah needed her to be? I'll do my best, she whispered. See that you do. When Eliza returned to the ranch, she found Rowan teaching Sarah to shoot the rifle. The girl's small frame dwarfed by the weapon, but her stance steady, her focus absolute. Like this, Pa? Exactly like that. Now breathe out slow and squeeze. The shot cracked across the frozen air. The target, a bottle on a fence post, shattered. Perfect, Rowan said, pride evident in his voice. You're a natural. Sarah beamed, then saw Eliza and her expression shuddered. Did you talk to Mrs. Chen? I did. She said you're welcome to stay with her, for as long as necessary. Because you're leaving. It wasn't a question. Rowan knelt beside his daughter. Just for a little while. To get help. To stop the men who are threatening us. You mean to fight them? Yes, and you might not come back. The silence stretched painful and honest. We might not, Rowan admitted, but we're going to try very hard to come back. Because we love you, and because we're not giving up without a fight. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Promise me something. Anything. Promise that if you can't come back, you'll make them pay, all of them, for what they did, for what they're trying to do. Promise me they won't win. Rowan pulled her into a fierce hug. I promise, one way or another, they won't win. That night, they finalized the plan. Rowan would leave first, 2 days ahead, taking the northern route. He'd scout the passes, mark any obstacles, and wait at the first safe house marked on Catherine's map. Eliza would follow with the journal, using the southern approach to create confusion about their actual route. They'd meet at a rendezvous point 3 days out, then push together for Denver. Meanwhile, someone needed to stay at the ranch to maintain the illusion of normalcy. After much argument, they convinced Jacob Morrison's nephew, a quiet young man named Thomas who'd done some ranch work before, to stay on. He'd keep the fires lit, do the visible chores, make it look like life continued as normal. They'll figure it out eventually, Thomas warned. I can't pass for either of you up close. We only need a few days, Rowan said. After that, it won't matter. We'll either succeed or we won't. The night before Rowan's departure, Eliza couldn't sleep. She found him in the barn, checking and rechecking his supplies with methodical precision. Can't stop your hands from working? She asked. If I stop, I'll think too hard about everything that can go wrong. He didn't look up from the pack he was organizing. You should be resting. You'll need your strength. I can't rest. I keep thinking about Sarah, about what happens to her if we fail. Morrison will take care of her. He and Catherine were close before. He'll see her raised right. That's not the same as having a family. No, but it's better than leaving her orphaned with no one. Finally, he looked up, his expression softer than usual. You've gotten attached to her. How could I not? She's extraordinary. She is, Catherine's daughter through and through. He paused. I was wrong about you, Eliza. When you first arrived, I thought you were too soft for this life, too fragile. You weren't wrong. I was soft. I was fragile. Was. Past tense. His slight smile was unexpected. You're neither of those things now. You've become someone who can survive out here. Maybe even thrive. I had good teachers. You had determination. That matters more than teaching. He closed the pack, secured the straps. If something happens to me out there, you keep going. You get that journal to Denver, you expose those bastards, and you make sure Sarah knows why we did this. Make sure she knows we weren't running away from her. We were fighting for her future. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that. No, but I choose to believe it anyway. She stepped closer. We're going to survive this, Rowan, both of us. And we're going to come back and build something real here. Something worth all this risk. Well, he reached out, squeezed her hand briefly. The first deliberate, gentle touch since their wedding. I hope you're right. I am. You'll see. Rowan left before dawn, a shadow disappearing into the pre-light gloom. Sarah watched from the window, her small hand pressed against the glass, and Eliza stood behind her with a hand on her shoulder. He'll be careful, Eliza said quietly. I know, he's always careful. But careful doesn't always mean safe. Sarah turned, and her eyes were too knowing. When do you leave? Tomorrow night, after dark. I made you something. The girl ran to her room, returned with a small cloth bundle. Inside was bread, hard cheese, dried meat, travel food, carefully wrapped. It's not much, but it'll keep you from starving. Eliza felt her throat tighten. Thank you, sweetheart. And this? Sarah pulled something from her pocket, a small carved wooden bird, smooth from handling. Mom made it for me when I was little. She said it was a symbol, that even small things could be strong if they were brave enough. She pressed it into Eliza's palm. You're brave enough, so you get to carry it. Sarah, bring it back to me. That way I know you'll come back. Eliza pulled the girl into a tight hug, feeling her small frame trembling despite her brave face. I promise. I'll bring it back. And I'll bring your father back. And we'll all be together again. You better, Because I'm not losing another mother. The words broke something in Eliza's chest and remade it stronger. The next day passed in careful preparation and growing tension. Thomas arrived with his own supplies, looking nervous but determined. Eliza showed him the routines, feeding times, where the tools were kept, how to keep the fire going through the night. If anyone comes asking questions, she said, you tell them, mister. Hale is out checking the north pastures, I'm resting from illness, and we're not receiving visitors. Be polite but firm. And if they push, then you run. Don't try to fight men like these. Just get to town, get to Morrison, and get safe. Thomas nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. I can do that. As darkness fell, Eliza made her final preparations. The journal went into a waterproof pouch secured inside her saddlebag. The revolver went into her coat pocket, fully loaded. Catherine's maps went into an inner pocket, protected from weather. The small carved bird went into her shirt pocket, over her heart. Mrs. Chen arrived with a wagon just after full dark, her expression grim. Sarah's things are packed, Eliza said. She knows to go with you. I'll keep her safe. You just worry about keeping yourself alive. Sarah appeared in the doorway, small and solemn in her traveling coat. She looked at Eliza for a long moment, then crossed the room and hugged her fiercely. Come back, she whispered. Please come back. I will, I promise. Ma made promises too, and she didn't keep them. Your mother didn't break her promises, sweetheart. Life broke them for her, but I'm going to be more stubborn than life. You'll see. Sarah pulled back, wiped her eyes roughly. Okay, I believe you. Watching them drive away toward town was one of the hardest things Eliza had ever done. But she waited until the wagon disappeared into the darkness, then turned to the barn where her horse was already saddled and waiting. The journey began in silence and shadows. Eliza rode south initially, following old hunting trails that Catherine's map marked as rarely used. The night was brutally cold, the moon nearly full, turning the snow-covered landscape into a study in silver and black. Every sound seemed magnified, the crunch of hooves in snow, the creak of leather, the whisper of wind through bare branches. She saw no one for the first 3 hours. Then, as she crested a ridge, she spotted them, 4 riders on the main road below, spread out in a search pattern. They were looking for her. Eliza dismounted, led her horse back below the ridgeline, and waited. The riders passed slowly, methodically checking the landscape. One of them stopped, seemed to stare directly at her hiding spot, and her hand found the revolver. But then he moved on, and the danger passed. She waited another hour before continuing, moving parallel to the road, but staying in the high country where the terrain was rougher but offered better concealment. The cold was savage, seeping through her layers, making her fingers ache even inside thick gloves. But she kept moving. By dawn, she'd covered 20 miles and reached the first waypoint Catherine had marked, an abandoned line shack used by shepherds in summer, empty now and half buried in snow. Eliza cleared the door enough to get inside, unsaddled her horse, and collapsed onto the rough wooden floor. She allowed herself 2 hours of sleep, the revolver in her hand, before forcing herself back into the saddle. The second day was worse. The temperature dropped further and snow began to fall, light at first, then heavier. The trail Catherine had marked became difficult to follow under the fresh snow, and twice Eliza found herself backtracking after hitting dead ends. Worse, she saw more riders. They were spreading out, covering more ground, closing the net systematically. Someone had figured out they'd left. Someone was coordinating a search. As darkness fell on the second night, Eliza reached a decision point. The route forked. One path continued south through lower country, easier travel but more exposed. The other cut east through a mountain pass that Catherine had marked as dangerous in winter. Eliza chose the pass. The climb was brutal. The trail, such as it was, wound through narrow defiles between towering rock walls, the footing treacherous with ice. Her horse struggled, slipping frequently, and more than once Eliza had to dismount and lead it through particularly difficult sections. At midnight, halfway through the pass, the real storm hit. It came from nowhere, a wall of wind and snow that reduced visibility to nothing. Eliza had faced winter weather before, but this was different. This was nature trying to kill her with impersonal efficiency. The wind was so strong it threatened to knock her from her feet. The snow came so thick she couldn't see her own hands. She found a slight overhang in the rock wall, barely enough to provide shelter, and huddled there with her horse, both of them shaking with cold and exhaustion. The storm raged for hours. Eliza lost feeling in her feet, her hands, her face. She tried to stay awake, knowing that sleep in these conditions meant death, but exhaustion pulled at her with inexorable force. She thought of Sarah, waiting in town, of Rowan, somewhere ahead, hopefully safe, of Thomas back at the ranch, maintaining the fiction, of all the people counting on her to survive, to succeed, to deliver justice. The carved wooden bird pressed against her chest, a small, hard reminder of promises made. She would not die here. She refused. When dawn finally broke, the storm had passed, leaving a world transformed. Snow had drifted in places higher than her head. But the pass ahead was visible now, and the worst was behind her. Eliza stood on frozen legs, checked her horse. It was in bad shape, but still alive, and kept moving. The descent from the pass took most of the day. By the time she reached the rendezvous point, an old mining camp marked on the map, she was barely conscious, operating on instinct and stubbornness alone. And there, impossible and perfect, was Rowan. He had a fire going in the ruins of a cabin, had cleared space and set up a basic camp. When he saw her stumbling down the trail, he ran to meet her, catching her as her legs finally gave out. "I've got you," he said. "You made it. You're safe now." "The pass," she mumbled through numb lips. "Storm. Thought I'd die." "But you didn't. You're too stubborn to die." He was already leading her horse, half carrying her toward the fire. "Come on. We need to get you warm before frostbite sets in." The next hours passed in a blur. Rowan stripped her frozen outer layers, wrapped her in blankets, forced hot broth down her throat. He checked her fingers, her toes, her face for frostbite, his expression grim but focused. "You'll lose part of your left ear probably," he said. "Maybe a couple fingertips. But you'll live." "The journal? Is that seriously what you're worried about right now? Did it survive?" He pulled the waterproof pouch from her saddlebag, opened it. The journal was intact, dry, perfect. It survived, though I'm beginning to think it's cursed. Not cursed, just expensive. She tried to smile, wasn't sure if her frozen face cooperated. "How was your route?" "Easy compared to what you just did. I went through the northern pass 2 days ago, before the storm hit. Made good time, got here yesterday, and have been waiting and worrying ever since." He pulled the blankets tighter around her. "I should have gone with you. Should never have let you take the harder route alone. We needed the misdirection, and I made it. Barely. But I did." Her eyes were drifting closed despite her best efforts. "How much further to Denver? Day and a half if we push hard. But you need to rest first." "Can't rest. They're behind me. Saw riders. Lots of riders." "How close?" "Half day, maybe. Definitely searching the southern routes." Rowan cursed softly. "Then we move at first light. Push straight through to Denver. It's risky, but waiting here is riskier." "Agreed." She let her eyes close. "Wake me in 2 hours. That's all I need." "Eliza, in 2 hours, Rowan. Then we finish this." He was quiet for a moment. Then she felt his hand squeeze hers gently. "All right, 2 hours. But then we ride like hell itself is chasing us." "It is," she murmured, already drifting. "It absolutely is." She woke to Rowan shaking her shoulder, the sky still dark but lightening toward dawn. "They're coming," he said flatly. "I heard shots in the distance. They found our trail." Eliza was on her feet instantly, pain and exhaustion forgotten in the surge of adrenaline. "How many?" "Can't tell, but enough to be shooting at something." They broke camp in minutes, erasing what evidence of their presence they could, and rode hard toward the east. The horses were tired, but they had no choice. It was speed or capture, and capture meant death. The sun rose on their desperate flight, turning the snow to gold and making them horribly visible. Eliza kept glancing back, expecting to see riders cresting the ridges behind them, but the horizon remained empty. Empty, but not safe. Never safe. "There," Rowan said suddenly, pointing ahead. "Denver. We made it." The city sprawled in the valley below, civilization and safety and the promise of justice. Eliza felt tears sting her eyes. Whether from cold, relief, or exhaustion, she couldn't say. "Not yet," she said. "We're not safe until we find Martin Cross. Until this journal is in the right hands and the information is public. Then let's finish it." They rode into Denver like ghosts, covered in trail dust and frost, their horses lathered and trembling. People stared as they passed, but Eliza barely noticed. All her focus was on finding the newspaper office, on completing the mission that had cost so much already. The Denver Chronicle occupied a 3-story building in the heart of the city. They tied their horses outside and stumbled through the front door, drawing shocked stares from the clerks working there. "I need to see Martin Cross," Eliza said, her voice hoarse from cold and exertion. "Tell him it's about the Blackwell Empire. Tell him I have proof." The clerk's eyes widened. "Mr. Cross is— I know who he is, and he'll want to see what I have. Trust me." 10 minutes later, they sat in a cluttered office facing a man in his 50s with ink-stained fingers and the sharp eyes of someone who'd spent his life hunting truth through lies. Martin Cross opened the journal, read 3 pages, and went very still. "Where did you get this?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "My late husband kept it, as insurance, against the people who eventually killed him." Eliza leaned forward. "Everything you need is in there. Names, dates, amounts. Senators on the payroll, contracts manipulated, people murdered, an entire empire built on corruption." Cross was already reading again, his expression growing darker with each page. "Do you understand what you've just handed me? What this will do?" "I understand it'll destroy them. That's all I care about." "It'll do more than that. This will bring down judges, politicians, businessmen across half the country. The ripples will be felt for years." He looked up, his eyes hard. "And it'll paint a target on your back that'll never go away. They'll come for you. They'll never stop coming." "They're already coming," Rowan said. "Have been since Boston. This way. At least we fight back." Cross studied them both, then slowly nodded. "All right. I'll run it. Front page, full exposure, everything. But I need a few days to verify facts, coordinate with sources, make sure this is airtight. Can you stay safe that long?" "We'll manage," Eliza said, though she had no idea how. "There's a boarding house 3 blocks north, run by a woman named Martha Hendricks. She's discreet and she owes me favors. Tell her I sent you. Stay there, stay quiet, and in 3 days this all goes public." They left the Chronicle office as the afternoon was fading toward evening, exhaustion finally catching up with them both. The boarding house was exactly as Cross had described, clean, quiet, and run by a woman who asked no questions when they arrived half-frozen and fully desperate. In the small room they rented, Eliza finally let herself collapse. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." "Not yet. 3 more days, then we've done it." 3 days feels impossible right now." "I know." Rowan sat beside her on the narrow bed, and for a moment they simply existed in shared exhaustion. "But we've made it this far. We can make it 3 more days. And then? Then we go home. Back to Sarah. Back to the ranch. Back to building the life we started. If they let us, they won't have a choice. Once this goes public, they'll be too busy defending themselves to come after us." Eliza wanted to believe that. But she'd seen the look in Cross's eyes when he'd warned her about the permanent target. Some stains never washed away. Some enemies never forgave. But for tonight, they were safe. For tonight, they'd succeeded. For tonight, that would have to be enough. Outside, Denver carried on with its ordinary evening, people heading home, shops closing, lamps being lit against the gathering dark. Somewhere in that ordinary world, the journal was being verified, fact-checked, prepared for publication. Somewhere, the empire that had hunted her was about to face its reckoning. 3 more days. They just had to survive 3 more days. They didn't get 3 days. Eliza woke on the second morning to the sound of breaking glass downstairs and Martha Hendricks screaming. She was on her feet instantly, revolver in hand, her heart hammering against her ribs. Rowan was already at the door, rifle raised, his face hard with controlled fury. "Out the window," he said quietly. "Fire escape. Go now." "Not without you." "I'll be right behind you, but if they get up here and we're trapped—" The door at the end of the hall exploded inward. 2 men, well-dressed despite the early hour, weapons drawn. They saw Rowan and fired without hesitation. Rowan dropped, rolled, came up shooting. One man went down screaming. The other ducked back into the stairwell, and Eliza heard him shouting for reinforcements. "Go!" Rowan roared. This time she didn't argue. She threw open the window, felt the shock of cold morning air, and climbed onto the rusted fire escape. It groaned under her weight, protesting decades of neglect, but held. Rowan came through the window behind her just as more shots tore through the room. They descended as fast as the rickety metal would allow, jumped the last 6 feet to the alley below, and ran. Behind them, shouts, the crash of boots on metal, the sharp crack of rifles. They burst onto the main street, drawing shocked stares from early morning shopkeepers. Rowan grabbed Eliza's hand and pulled her into a side street, then another, weaving through Denver's morning chaos with the desperate focus of hunted animals. "The Chronicle," Eliza gasped as they ran. "We need to warn Cross." "They'll have men there already. It's the obvious target." "Then what do we do?" Rowan pulled her into a narrow gap between buildings, pressed them both against the wall as footsteps pounded past on the street. "We find another way. Another newspaper. Another journalist. Hell, we stand on a street corner and shout the truth if we have to, but we don't let them silence this. Cross has the journal. If they get to him, then we tell the story without it. We've both read it. We know the names, the crimes. We become the evidence." It was insane. It was desperate. It was all they had left. They waited until the footsteps faded, then emerged cautiously onto a different street. Eliza's mind was racing, trying to remember everything she'd read in Thomas's journal, every damning detail that could bring down the Empire hunting them. "There," Rowan said, pointing to a smaller building across the street. A sign read, "Rocky Mountain Telegraph, wire service to Eastern papers." A telegraph office? Better, a wire service. Whatever we send goes to dozens of newspapers simultaneously. They can't silence all of them. They crossed the street at a run, burst through the door of the telegraph office. A clerk looked up, startled, took in their disheveled appearance and the weapons they carried. "We need to send an urgent message," Eliza said, "to every major newspaper you service, immediately." "Ma'am, I can't just—" Rowan slammed money on the counter. "Every newspaper, right now, or we'll find someone who will." The clerk's eyes widened at the amount. "What's the message?" Eliza closed her eyes, pulled from memory the most damning facts she could remember. "Send this. J. Blackwell and Sons financial empire built on fraud. Senator James Whitmore accepted $30,000 in bribes, 1873 to 1875. Judge Harold Mason on permanent payroll. Philadelphia rail contract manipulated through false bids. Chicago warehouse fire that killed 17 workers was arson to cover evidence." The clerk was writing frantically. "Ma'am, these are serious accusations." "They're not accusations. They're facts." "Keep writing. Boston Union organizer Michael Chen murdered by hired men, April 1874. Mine collapse in Colorado deliberately caused to drive down stock prices. Evidence exists in journal kept by Thomas Blackwell, now in possession of Denver Chronicle journalist Martin Cross. You're accusing some of the most powerful men in the country of murder, fraud, corruption. Yes, send it, now, to everyone." The clerk looked at Rowan, who simply nodded, his expression promising violence if the message wasn't sent. "All right, but this is going to cause—" He never finished the sentence. The front window shattered inward, glass exploding across the office. Eliza threw herself behind the counter as bullets tore through the space where she'd been standing. Rowan returned fire through the broken window, his shots precise and controlled. "Send the message," he shouted at the clerk, who ducked under his desk. "Send it everywhere." The clerk's hands were shaking, but he reached up, began working the telegraph key with desperate speed. Click, click, click. The message flowing out across copper wires to distant cities, unstoppable now, spreading like wildfire. More shots from outside. The sound of breaking wood as someone tried to force the back door. "It's sent," the clerk gasped. "New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston. It's all sent." Then we're done here." Rowan grabbed Eliza's hand. "Back door, move." They burst through the rear exit just as it splintered open, nearly colliding with 2 men in dark coats. Rowan fired point blank, drove them back, and they were running again through morning-bright streets that had become a war zone. People were screaming, diving for cover. Someone was ringing a bell. The marshal's office, probably, responding to the gunfire. But the marshal would be too late, and might be bought anyway. "Where are we going?" Eliza shouted over the chaos. "Train station. We get out of Denver before they lock down the city." "And go where?" "Home. Back to Coldwater Creek. Back to Sarah. This is their territory. We need to get to ours." They rounded a corner and nearly ran into Martin Cross. The journalist was disheveled, his jacket torn, blood on his temple. But he was alive, and he was grinning like a wolf. "You magnificent fools," he said. "The telegraph office? Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant." "You got out," Eliza gasped. "They came for the Journal at dawn, smashed up my office, threatened my staff. But I'd already moved it. Gave it to Federal Marshal Hayes last night after I verified enough facts to know it was solid." His grin widened. "Hayes is honest. One of the few left. He's already serving warrants. And now with your telegraph going out to every paper in the country, they can't bury this. It's too big, too public, too everywhere." "So it's over?" Hope surged in Eliza's chest. "We won?" "Not over. Not by a long shot. But you've turned the tables. They're the ones running now. They're the ones about to lose everything." Cross pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "This is my article. Goes to print in tomorrow's edition. I wanted you to see it first." Eliza unfolded it with shaking hands. The headline screamed, "Empire of Corruption Exposed. Blackwell Dynasty Built on Blood and Bribery." Below it, everything. Every crime, every name, every damning detail. And at the bottom, a line that made her throat tight. "Information provided by Mrs. Eliza Hale, widow of Thomas Blackwell, at great personal risk." "You used my name." "I had to. Source credibility. But also," Cross's expression grew serious, "also because you deserve credit for this. You brought down an empire, Mrs. Hale. That takes courage most people don't have." "It takes desperation," she said quietly, "and anger, and the help of good people who risk themselves for strangers." Shots rang out again, closer this time. Cross looked toward the sound, then back at them. "You need to go. Get out of the city while you still can. Hayes will protect you once the marshals arrive in force, but until then, you're too visible, too vulnerable." He gripped Rowan's shoulder briefly. "Take care of her. She's just changed the country." "I intend to," Rowan said. They made it to the train station through streets now swarming with local law enforcement. The marshal and his deputies had cordoned off the telegraph office, were questioning witnesses, creating chaos that worked in Eliza and Rowan's favor. The westbound train was boarding. They bought tickets with the last of their money and climbed aboard just as the whistle blew. As Denver fell away behind them, Eliza finally let herself breathe. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Rowan pulled her close, and for the first time since they'd met, the gesture was gentle, protective, speaking of more than just survival. "You did it. I just kept you alive long enough. We kept each other alive." She leaned into his warmth, exhaustion pulling at her. "Do you think they'll come after us still, even with everything exposed?" "Probably. Powerful men don't forgive easily. But they'll have to come through lawyers and marshals now, not hired guns. That's progress. And if they don't accept legal defeat, then we fight. But on our terms, on our land, with people who'll stand with us." His arm tightened around her. "We're not running anymore, Eliza. We're going home." Home. The word settled over her like a benediction. The train ride took 2 days, each one bringing them closer to Montana territory, closer to the life they'd left behind. Eliza spent the time sleeping in brief, fitful bursts, watching the landscape change outside the window, and replaying everything that had happened. They'd won. Against impossible odds, against an empire built on corruption and violence, they'd actually won. But victory felt strange, unfinished, like a story missing its final chapter. On the second evening, as the train rolled through familiar territory, Rowan spoke quietly. "I've been thinking about what happens next, after we get home." "What do you mean?" "This marriage. It started as convenience, as survival. But somewhere along the way," he paused, choosing words carefully, "it became real. For me, at least. And if it hasn't for you, I understand. We can maintain the fiction publicly, live separate lives privately. Whatever you need." Eliza was quiet for a long moment, examining her own heart. When had it changed? In the barn, learning to split wood, teaching Sarah to make biscuits, riding through the storm, knowing Rowan was ahead, waiting? Or maybe earlier, in that first moment when he'd looked at her and seen not decoration but possibility? "It's real for me too," she said finally. "I didn't expect it, didn't plan for it, but somewhere between burning your dinner and nearly dying in that pass, I stopped being Thomas Blackwell's widow and became someone new, someone who belongs in that life, with you, with Sarah. Even though it's hard, even though the frontier doesn't forgive mistakes. Especially because of that, I spent my whole life in a world that valued appearance over substance, comfort over challenge. I was suffocating and didn't even know it." She met his eyes. "I'm not suffocating anymore." He smiled, rare and genuine. "Good. Because I'm not letting you go now. You're too valuable. As a ranch hand? As a partner? As a mother to Sarah? As the woman stubborn enough to bring down an empire and survive?" He kissed her forehead, gentle. "As my wife." The words settled between them, true and solid and earned through fire. They arrived in Coldwater Creek at dawn on the third day. The town looked unchanged, still small, still harsh, still clinging to survival in the frozen wilderness. But as they stepped off the train, Eliza saw differences. People were gathered on the platform. Mrs. Chen stood at the front, and beside her, impossibly perfect, was Sarah. The girl saw them and ran, her small legs pumping, her face split by a smile that could have melted the snow. "You came back! You both came back!" Rowan caught her up in his arms, held her tight, his face buried in her hair. "Of course we did. We promised." Sarah pulled back, looked at Eliza. "You kept it safe? The bird?" Eliza pulled the carved wooden figure from her pocket. "Never let it go, not for a moment." The girl took it reverently, then threw her arms around Eliza's waist. "I knew you'd come back. I knew it." Mrs. Chen approached, her weathered face softer than Eliza had ever seen it. "You did it. The news came through on the telegraph yesterday. Arrests in Boston, New York, Chicago, senators resigning, judges being removed. You brought down the whole rotten structure." "We just told the truth," Eliza said. "Sometimes that's enough." Mrs. Chen looked past them, her expression growing serious. "But there's something you should know. 3 men came through town yesterday, well-dressed, Eastern accents, asking about your ranch." Rowan's expression hardened. "Where are they now?" "Rode out toward your place about an hour ago. Thomas sent word through his brother, said they had guns, looked professional." She paused. "We organized a group. 15 men, good shots, waiting at the general store. Been waiting since midnight. We weren't going to let them hurt you if you came back." Eliza felt tears sting her eyes. "You stood up for us. You stood up for what's right. Least we can do is return the favor." Mrs. Chen gestured toward the assembled crowd. "These folks are ready to ride with you. End this one way or another." Judge Morrison pushed through the crowd, his expression grave but determined. "I've got warrants. Federal ones, issued by Marshal Hayes in Denver. These men are wanted for questioning in connection with the Blackwell investigation. We can arrest them legally now." "And if they don't want to be arrested?" Rowan asked. "Then we do what frontiersmen have always done. We defend our own." They rode out as the sun climbed higher, a column of 15 armed riders through snow that sparkled like diamonds. Sarah rode with Mrs. Chen in the wagon, safely back but refusing to be left behind entirely. As they approached the ranch, Eliza saw smoke rising from the chimney. The livestock were out, moving in their usual patterns. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Rowan raised a hand, stopping the column. "Spread out. Surround the house. If they're in there, they're not leaving without answering for what they've done." The riders moved into position with practiced efficiency. These were men who knew the land, knew tactics born from necessity and survival. Within minutes, the house was encircled. Morrison rode forward, official papers in hand. "You in the house, this is Judge Jacob Morrison. I have federal warrants for your arrest. Come out peacefully, and you'll be treated fairly. Resist, and we'll drag you out." Silence. Then the front door opened, and Thomas stepped out, his hands raised, his face pale. "They're gone," he called. "Left about 10 minutes ago. Rode north." "How many?" Rowan demanded. 3. They questioned me about where you'd gone, when you'd be back. I told them I didn't know. They didn't believe me, started getting rough, but then one of them got a telegram. Thomas lowered his hands shakily. Whatever it said, it spooked them bad. They stopped caring about you, about the house, about everything. Just grabbed their horses and ran. Morrison pulled out the telegram he'd received. Probably this. Federal marshals arrested James Whitmore in Philadelphia this morning, Harold Mason in Boston last night. The whole leadership of the Blackwell Empire is in custody. These men just became expendable, probably realized their employers can't protect them anymore. So they ran, Eliza said quietly, just like that. After everything, they just ran. Rats leaving a sinking ship, Mrs. Chen said with satisfaction. Good riddance. But Rowan wasn't satisfied. They could regroup, come back when we're less prepared. Not likely, Morrison said. Marshal Hayes sent word. Every man connected to the Blackwell organization is being hunted now. These three will spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders, same as they made you do. Seems fitting? It did seem fitting, but Eliza wouldn't feel safe until she saw the bars close on every man who'd hunted her. They searched the house thoroughly, found evidence of the men's presence, coffee cups, disturbed furniture, signs of a hasty departure. But they were truly gone. The riders began to disperse, satisfied that the immediate threat had passed. But before they left, each one stopped to shake Rowan's hand, to nod at Eliza, to acknowledge what had been accomplished. You made this territory safer, one grizzled rancher said. Not just for you, but for all of us. That kind of corruption spreads if it's not cut out. You cut it out. We did it together, Eliza said. All of us. Maybe. But you started it. That takes something special. When the last rider had gone, Eliza stood on the porch of the ranch house and looked out over the frozen plains. The land that had seemed so hostile, so foreign, now felt like possibility, like home. Sarah tugged on her coat. Can we go inside? I want to show you something. Inside, the house was warm, the fire still burning from where the unwanted visitors had tried to make themselves comfortable. Sarah led Eliza to the kitchen table where a piece of paper was laid out, covered in careful childish writing. I wrote down everything Ma taught me, Sarah explained. All the recipes, all the tricks for surviving winter, all the things you need to know, because you're my mother now too. And mothers should know these things. Eliza pulled the girl into a fierce hug, tears streaming freely now. Thank you, sweetheart. This is the most precious gift anyone's ever given me. There's more. Sarah pulled away, ran to her room, came back with a box. Inside was a dress, simple, practical, clearly made by a child's unpracticed hands, but sewn with love and determination. I made it for you. It's not fancy like your city dresses, but it'll keep you warm, and it means you're really one of us now. Rowan appeared in the doorway, watching this exchange with something soft in his expression. She worked on it every night while you were gone, wouldn't let Mrs. Chen help, said it had to be from her. Eliza held the dress like it was spun gold. It's perfect, absolutely perfect. She looked at Sarah. And you're right, I am one of you now. This is my home, you're my family, and nothing will ever change that. That night, after Sarah was asleep and the house was quiet, Eliza and Rowan sat by the fire. The journal was destroyed. Morrison had confirmed that Cross had turned it over to the marshals along with his verified copy. The threat was neutralized. The empire was crumbling. They'd won. What happens now? Eliza asked quietly. Now we live. We build. We raise Sarah. We make this ranch into something that lasts. Rowan took her hand. We become the family we both needed. Just like that? After everything? Not just like that. It'll be hard. There'll be setbacks, struggles, probably more threats from men who don't want to accept defeat, but we'll face them together. He squeezed her hand. That's what families do. Eliza leaned against him, felt his arm come around her shoulders. Through the window, she could see stars emerging in the darkening sky, cold and brilliant and infinite. She thought of Boston, of her old life, of the woman she'd been, fragile, decorative, trapped in gilded meaninglessness. That woman was dead. In her place was someone forged by fire and ice, by necessity and choice, by love earned through shared survival. I was so afraid when I first arrived, she admitted. of the land, of the cold, of being useless, of failing you and Sarah. You didn't fail. You exceeded every expectation I had. I burned dinner for a month. You also brought down an empire and saved our lives. I'll take that trade. She laughed, surprising herself. When you put it that way. Besides, Sarah's teaching you to cook. Give it another month and you'll be making biscuits as good as hers. That's ambitious. You're an ambitious woman. You'll manage. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn low. Outside, the wind picked up, howling across the plains, but inside they were warm, safe, together. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of winter day that was beautiful precisely because it was so brutal. Eliza woke to find Rowan already gone, doing the morning chores. She dressed in Sarah's handmade dress. It fit surprisingly well, and went to help. She found him in the barn, tending the horses, and he looked up when she entered. "Nice dress," he said with a slight smile. "Your daughter has hidden talents." "She gets that from her mother, both of them." The compliment warmed her more than the dress did. They worked side by side, the routine familiar now, comfortable. Feed the horses, check the cattle, collect eggs from the chickens that Sarah had named despite Rowan's protests that naming food was impractical. As they finished, Sarah appeared in the barn doorway, already bundled against the cold. "Mrs. Chen sent word," she announced. "Telegraph came through. More arrests. They got everyone, even the men who ran from here. Caught them trying to board a ship in San Francisco." "It's really over then," Eliza said. "The arrests are over. But the trials will take months, maybe years." Sarah looked wise beyond her years. "Justice is slow, but it's coming." "How do you know all this?" Rowan asked. "I read the newspapers Mrs. Chen brings. I'm not a baby, Pa." "No, you're definitely not." He ruffled her hair. "Come on, let's get breakfast. I'm starving." They walked back to the house together, three people who'd become a family through fire and necessity and choice. The morning sun turned the snow to gold, and for the first time since arriving in Montana Territory, Eliza felt something she'd almost forgotten. Peace. Not the absence of threat. There would always be challenges, struggles, dangers in this hard land, but peace that came from knowing who she was, where she belonged, and what she was willing to fight for. She belonged here, with these people, in this life. And anyone who tried to take that away would learn the same lesson the Blackwell Empire had learned. Some things, once claimed, are defended to the last breath. Some families, once forged, are unbreakable. And some women, once awakened to their own strength, are unstoppable. The peace lasted exactly 3 weeks before the lawyers arrived. They came in a polished carriage that looked absurd against the snow-covered plains, two men in expensive suits who'd clearly never been west of Chicago. Eliza watched them from the kitchen window as they climbed down, their shoes immediately sinking into the mud that spring thaw was beginning to create. "Rowan," she called quietly. He appeared beside her, took one look, and his jaw tightened. "Stay inside with Sarah." "No." She squared her shoulders. "Whatever they want, we face it together." The knock came moments later, precise and professional. Rowan opened the door to find the two men standing there, briefcases in hand, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Mr. Rowan Hale?" the taller one asked. "That's right." "And Mrs. Eliza Hale, formerly Blackwell." "She's inside." "What's this about?" The lawyer cleared his throat. "My name is Edmund Pierce. This is my associate, Harold Chen. We represent the federal receivership handling the Blackwell estate assets. May we come in?" Rowan stepped aside, and the men entered, bringing cold air and the smell of expensive cologne. They looked around the modest interior with barely concealed distaste, as if poverty might be contagious. Eliza emerged from the kitchen, Sarah close behind her. "Gentlemen, I assume this is about the trials." Indirectly. Pierce set his briefcase on the table, opened it with precise movements. "The primary defendants have all been convicted. James Whitmore received 15 years for bribery and corruption. Harold Mason got 20 for conspiracy to commit murder. 6 others received various sentences ranging from 5 to 12 years. "Good," Rowan said flatly. "They deserve worse." "Perhaps, but that's not why we're here." Pierce pulled out a sheaf of papers. "Mrs. Hale, as the widow of Thomas Blackwell, and the key witness whose testimony and evidence brought down the organization, you're entitled to certain Considerations. Eliza's stomach tightened. What kind of considerations? The Blackwell estate was valued at approximately $2.3 million before asset seizures. After paying restitution to victims, court costs, and legal fees, there remains a substantial sum. As Thomas Blackwell's legal heir, you have a claim to those remaining assets. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. $2.3 million. More money than Eliza could have imagined even when she'd been married to Thomas. How much remains? She asked, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. After all deductions, approximately $400,000. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. More than comfortably, in fact. Sarah's hand found Eliza's, squeezing tight. There's a condition, of course, Pierce continued. The money is held in trust in Boston. You would need to return to Massachusetts to claim it, to sign the necessary papers, to establish residency for legal purposes. Return to Boston, Eliza said it flatly, without inflection. Yes, we've made arrangements. A house has been prepared for you in the city. Nothing ostentatious, but suitable for a woman of your former station. You would be expected to maintain a certain level of discretion about the case, to avoid inflammatory public statements, but otherwise you'd be free to rebuild your life. In Boston. Yes, Mrs. Hale. In Boston. Rowan hadn't moved, but Eliza could feel tension radiating from him like heat. And if I don't return? She asked. Pierce and Chen exchanged glances. Then the money reverts to the federal treasury. You'd receive nothing. I see. Eliza looked at the papers, at the promise of wealth and security and everything she'd left behind. Then she looked at Sarah's trusting face, at the home they'd built from nothing, at Rowan standing silent and fierce beside her. Gentlemen, thank you for making the journey, but my answer is no. Pierce blinked. I'm sorry? No, I don't want the money. I don't want to return to Boston. I don't want anything to do with the Blackwell estate or the life I left behind. Mrs. Hale, perhaps you don't understand the magnitude. I understand perfectly. $400,000 is a fortune. It's security. It's comfort. It's everything I was raised to value. She straightened her shoulders. And it's worth less to me than what I have right here. You have a ranch that barely turns a profit in a territory that kills more people than it sustains, Chen said, speaking for the first time. You're choosing poverty over wealth, hardship over comfort. Why? Because this life is mine. I built it with my own hands. That money was built on suffering and corruption. I want no part of it. The victims have been compensated, Pierce protested. This is clean money now, legally yours. There's no such thing as clean money from a dirty source. It'll always carry the stain. Eliza moved to stand beside Rowan. My answer is final. Give the money to charity, build schools, help the families who were destroyed by the Blackwell organization. Do anything you want with it, but leave me out of it. The lawyer stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. Mrs. Hale, Pierce tried again, I must advise you to reconsider. This kind of opportunity doesn't come twice. I don't need it to come twice. I don't need it at all. She opened the door. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have work to do. The men gathered their papers with stiff movements, clearly unused to rejection. As they reached the door, Pierce turned back one final time. If you change your mind within the next 30 days, I won't. After they left, the carriage disappearing back toward town, Sarah spoke into the silence. That was a lot of money. Yes, it was. We could have had new dresses and fixed the barn roof and bought more cattle. We could have. But you said no. I did. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then nodded seriously. Good. That money was bad. Even I could feel it. Rowan pulled Eliza close, kissed the top of her head. You're either the wisest woman I've ever met, or the craziest. Probably both. Definitely both. He held her tighter. Thank you. For what? For choosing this. For choosing us. His voice was rough with emotion. For not leaving. I wasn't tempted, not even for a moment. And it was true. The money had been an abstraction, meaningless compared to the solid reality of Sarah's hand in hers, of Rowan's steady presence, of the life they were building together. But the real test came 2 months later, in the form of a letter from Martin Cross. Eliza opened it at the kitchen table while Sarah practiced her letters, and Rowan repaired harness leather by lamplight. The envelope was thick, official-looking, and when she unfolded the contents, her breath caught. "What is it?" Rowan asked, noticing her expression. They want me to testify, in person, at the Senate hearings in Washington." The trials had led to broader investigations, to a congressional inquiry into corruption in federal contracting and judicial appointments. It was historic, unprecedented, and apparently they wanted her as their star witness. "When?" Rowan's voice was carefully neutral. 6 weeks from now. They'd pay for travel, provide protection, everything. She kept reading. "They say my testimony could help secure reforms that would prevent this kind of corruption for generations, that I have a responsibility to see this through. Do you want to go?" Did she? Part of her recognized the importance, the potential for real lasting change, but another part, the part that had learned to value stability and home, recoiled from the idea of leaving again, even temporarily. "I don't know," she admitted. Sarah looked up from her work. "You should go." "Sweetheart, you should go," the girl repeated firmly. "Ma always said that if you can help people, you should, even if it's hard, even if you don't want to." She set down her pencil. "Those men hurt lots of people, not just us. If you can stop it from happening again, that's important." "She's right," Rowan said quietly. "This is bigger than us, bigger than the ranch. But I don't want to leave you both again. So we'll come with you." Rowan set down the harness. "Sarah's never seen a city. Might be good for her education, and I can make sure nothing happens to you. Washington isn't exactly safe territory for any of us. There might still be people loyal to the Blackwell interests. Then we'll be careful, but we'll be together." He met her eyes. "You taught me something these past months, about fighting for what's right even when it costs you. Now it's my turn to support you while you finish what you started." Eliza looked between them, her husband, her daughter, her family, and felt her heart swell with love so fierce it was almost painful. "All right," she said. "We'll go to Washington, all of us, together." The journey east was nothing like her desperate flight west. This time they traveled openly, in relative comfort, 3 people moving toward something instead of running away. Sarah pressed her face to the train window for hours, marveling at cities and crowds and buildings that reached toward the sky. "Is Boston like this?" she asked as they passed through Chicago. "Bigger," Eliza said. "Older. More formal. Do you miss it?" "Sometimes I miss the libraries, the museums, the theater." Eliza smiled. "But not enough to go back. Montana has its own beauty." Washington in May was humid and green, so different from Montana's spare landscape that it felt like a different planet. They stayed in a modest hotel near the Capitol, and on the morning of the hearing, Eliza dressed in her finest remaining dress, simple by Boston standards, but respectable, and prepared to face the Senate committee. Rowan adjusted her collar, his hands gentle. "You're going to be magnificent." "I'm terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just tell the truth. That's all they need." Sarah hugged her fiercely. "Make them listen. Make them understand." The Senate hearing room was imposing, all dark wood and high ceilings and the weight of power. Senators sat in a curved row, looking down at the witness chair like judges. Spectators filled the gallery. Journalists, lawyers, curious citizens drawn by the scandal. Eliza took her seat, placed her hands flat on the table to stop them shaking, and waited. Senator William Bradford, chairman of the committee, gavelled the room to order. "This hearing will come to order. We're here today to hear testimony regarding corruption in federal contracting and judicial appointments related to the Blackwell Financial Organization." He looked at Eliza. "Mrs. Hale, thank you for coming. Please state your full name for the record." "Eliza Margaret Vance Hale." "And you were previously married to Thomas Blackwell, deceased?" "Yes, sir." "Can you describe for this committee the nature of the corruption you witnessed?" Eliza took a breath, found Rowan's face in the gallery, and began. She told them everything. The journal Thomas had kept, the bribes paid to senators and judges, the contracts manipulated through fraud, the workers killed when they became inconvenient, the systematic corruption that had rotted the system from within. She spoke for 2 hours, answering questions with precision and honesty. Some senators were sympathetic, others hostile, but she met them all with steady resolve. Senator Marcus Whitfield, known to be hostile to reform, leaned forward. Mrs. Hale, isn't it true that you personally profited from this corruption? That you lived in luxury built on these very crimes you now condemn? Yes, sir, I did. I was complicit through ignorance and inaction. That's something I'll carry for the rest of my life. And yet you expect us to believe you're now motivated by conscience rather than revenge? Believe whatever you like, Senator, but the evidence speaks for itself. The journal documented crimes. The trials proved them. Men are in prison because of what they did, not because of what I said. She met his eyes. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust the facts. These facts could have been fabricated. They weren't, and you know they weren't, because some of the people implicated were your friends, your allies, your donors. She leaned forward. The question isn't whether I'm trustworthy, Senator. The question is whether you're willing to do what's right, even when it's politically inconvenient. The gallery erupted in whispers. Bradford gavelled for order, but his expression suggested he was fighting a smile. The testimony continued through the afternoon. By the end, Eliza was exhausted, wrung out from reliving trauma and defending herself against hostile questions. But she'd done it. She'd told the truth completely and publicly, and now it was part of the official record. Bradford dismissed her with thanks, and she walked out of the hearing room on shaking legs to find Rowan and Sarah waiting. You were amazing, Sarah whispered. I was terrified. That's what made you amazing. Rowan took her arm. Come on, let's get out of here before the journalists descend. But one journalist was waiting outside, Martin Cross, grinning like he'd just won a prize. That was the best political theater I've seen in 20 years, he said. You made Whitfield look like an idiot. And your point about political convenience, that'll be quoted in every paper in the country tomorrow. I wasn't trying to be theatrical. I was trying to be honest. Same thing sometimes. Cross fell into step beside them. The committee will issue recommendations, probably call for reforms in contracting oversight, judicial appointments, campaign finance. It'll be a fight to get them passed, but you just gave the reformers ammunition they desperately needed. So it mattered. It mattered enormously. You may have just changed how government operates for the next 50 years. Or they'll ignore everything I said and nothing will change. Possibly, but at least you gave them the chance to do better. Cross stopped at the hotel entrance. That's all any of us can do. Plant seeds. Hope some of them grow. That night, lying in bed with Rowan beside her and Sarah asleep in the next room, Eliza finally let herself feel the weight of what she'd accomplished. She'd survived. She'd fought back. She'd told the truth even when it was dangerous. And maybe, just maybe, she'd made the world slightly better. What are you thinking? Rowan asked in the darkness. That I want to go home. To Boston? No, to Montana, to our ranch, to our life. She rolled to face him. I want to watch Sarah grow up. I want to build something that lasts. I want to be done with all of this drama and just live. That can be arranged. He pulled her close. We'll leave tomorrow. Put all of this behind us and focus on what matters. What matters is right here. You, Sarah, the future we're building. Agreed. He kissed her softly. Let's go build it. They left Washington the next morning, 3 people traveling west toward home. The journey took days, but with each mile Eliza felt lighter, freer, as if she was shedding the weight of the past like an old coat. When they finally stepped off the train in Coldwater Creek, Mrs. Chen was waiting with the wagon. Heard you made quite an impression in Washington, she said as they loaded their bags. News travels fast. Telegraph's a wonderful thing. The whole town's talking about how you faced down those senators. Mrs. Chen's smile was sharp with pride. You've become something of a legend around here. I just told the truth. That's what makes you legendary. Most people won't do that when it costs them. As they drove toward the ranch, Eliza noticed changes. New buildings in town, more people on the streets, a sense of growth and possibility that hadn't been there before. Place is booming, Rowan observed. Ever since the newspapers started covering the trials, people have been coming west, looking for fresh starts, looking for places where corruption hasn't taken root yet. Mrs. Chen glanced back at Eliza. You're part of that. You showed people that one person can make a difference, that courage matters. Lots of folks took that lesson to heart. The ranch appeared over the rise, solid and welcoming. Thomas had kept it in good shape, and now that they were back, they could resume the work of building. Over the following weeks, they fell into new rhythms. Eliza had become competent at the daily tasks: cooking, cleaning, tending livestock. Not perfect, but good enough. Better than good enough, actually. She'd learned to read the weather, to anticipate problems, to solve issues as they arose. Sarah was growing like a weed, tall and confident, already helping with complex chores. She'd started teaching other children in town to read, using the books Eliza had brought from Boston, becoming a teacher in her own right. And Rowan had softened in ways Eliza wouldn't have thought possible. The hard edges remained, the practical strength, but now there was warmth too. Laughter. Gentleness with Sarah. Love, expressed in quiet actions more than words. One evening, 6 months after their return from Washington, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the plains in gold and crimson. Sarah was inside doing homework. The livestock were settled. Everything was peaceful. "I got a letter today," Rowan said, "from the territorial governor." "Oh?" "He wants to appoint me as a regional magistrate. Handle disputes, oversee legal matters for this part of the territory, says they need honest men in positions of authority." He paused. He mentioned that having a wife known for integrity wouldn't hurt either. "Would you want that, being a magistrate?" "Part of me says no. It's complications we don't need, but another part thinks maybe we have a responsibility to help build something better, to make sure the corruption you fought against doesn't take root here." Eliza considered. What does Sarah think? She said, and I quote, "If you can help people, you should, even if it's hard." His smile was rueful. She's too wise for her age. She gets it from her father, and her mother's, both of them. He took Eliza's hand. "If I do this, I'll need your help. You're better at reading people than I am, better at seeing through lies. We'd be partners in this, like we're partners in everything else. Then we'll do it together." The work as magistrate brought new challenges: disputes over water rights, property boundaries, accusations of theft and fraud. But Rowan approached each case with careful fairness, and Eliza helped him see the human dimensions behind the legal questions. Word spread that Magistrate Hale was honest, firm, and couldn't be bought. People traveled days to bring their cases before him, trusting that they'd receive real justice rather than whatever verdict money could purchase. It was exhausting work, but it mattered. 2 years after returning from Washington, Eliza received another letter from Martin Cross. The reform bill had passed, not perfectly, with compromises and weaknesses, but it had passed. Government contracting would now require public bids. Judicial appointments would face greater scrutiny. Campaign contributions would have limits. "It's not everything we hoped for," Cross wrote, "but it's progress. And it wouldn't have happened without your courage. You should be proud." Eliza showed the letter to Rowan and Sarah over dinner. "Are you proud?" Sarah asked. "I'm satisfied. There's a difference." Eliza folded the letter carefully. "Pride feels too much like claiming credit. I just did what needed doing. Lots of people contributed: the judges who weren't corrupt, the journalists who investigated, the senators who voted for reform despite pressure. I was just one piece of a larger effort." "The piece that started it," Rowan pointed out. "Maybe. But starting something doesn't mean you get all the credit for how it finishes." Sarah considered this seriously. "I think you can be proud and humble at the same time. Proud of what you did, humble about your part in it." "When did you become so wise?" "I had good teachers," Sarah grinned. "Both of you." That night, after Sarah had gone to bed, Eliza and Rowan sat by the fire as they often did. The house was quiet, the wind gentle outside, everything peaceful. "Do you ever regret it?" Rowan asked. "Giving up the money? The chance to live easy?" "Not once. Not even for a moment." Eliza leaned against him. "This life is harder, but it's mine in a way that money could never buy. I chose it. I built it. I earned it through work and struggle and refusing to quit. And the danger, the trials, everything you went through, was worth it to get here, to this moment, to this life." She laced her fingers through his. I thought I knew what I wanted when I married Thomas: security, status, comfort, but what I really wanted was purpose. And I found it here. With a stubborn rancher and his wild daughter in the middle of nowhere? Exactly that. He kissed her, slow and tender. I love you, Eliza Hale. In case I haven't said it enough. You show it every day. That's better than saying it. But I should still say it. You deserve to hear it. Then I love you too. Both of you. My family, my home, my life. Outside, the Montana wind whispered across the plains, carrying with it the promise of another hard winter, another season of struggle and survival. But inside they were warm. Inside they were safe. Inside they had everything that mattered. The years passed. Sarah grew into a formidable young woman, teaching school in Coldwater Creek and courting a young lawyer who'd come west to escape his own family's expectations. She married him in the same small church where Eliza and Rowan had made their vows official, and Eliza cried watching her daughter, because that's what Sarah was, regardless of blood, begin her own journey. The ranch prospered, not wealthy by Boston standards, but successful by frontier measures. They expanded the herd, improved the land, built additions to the house. Other families moved nearby, drawn by Rowan's reputation for fairness and Eliza's willingness to help newcomers adapt to frontier life. Coldwater Creek grew from a desperate huddle of buildings into a real town. Schools, churches, businesses, a future. And through it all, Eliza and Rowan built their life together. Not perfect, never easy, but real and solid and earned. On their 10th anniversary, Rowan took her back to the spot where they'd first met, the train depot that had seemed so bleak and hostile a decade before. I was expecting someone practical when I came here that day, he said. Someone who could cook and clean and work hard. Instead, I got you. Disappointed? Terrified, initially. You seemed so fragile, so out of place. He smiled. I underestimated you badly. Most people did. I underestimated myself. Not anymore. No, not anymore. She looked at the depot, remembering the frightened woman who'd stood here clutching a single trunk and a desperate hope. That person feels like a stranger now. She was brave, though, braver than she knew. She got on that train. She came to a place that terrified her. She married a stranger and chose to fight rather than run. She didn't have much choice. Everyone has choices. She made good ones. He pulled her close, and I'm grateful every day that she chose this, chose us. In the distance, a train whistle blew, new arrivals, new stories, new people seeking fresh starts in an unforgiving land. Eliza watched them disembark, saw their uncertain faces, their inappropriate luggage, their fear barely masked by determination. She recognized herself in them. The hope, the terror, the desperate courage of people betting everything on a future they couldn't see. Should we help them? She asked. Do you want to? Yes, because someone helped me. Mrs. Chen. Judge Morrison. You. All the people who stood with us when they didn't have to. She squeezed his hand. I want to be that for someone else. Want to help them survive long enough to become who they're meant to be. Then let's go introduce ourselves. They walked toward the new arrivals together, two people who'd survived fire and ice, corruption and violence, doubt and fear. Who'd built something real from nothing. Who'd learned that strength wasn't about never being afraid. It was about being afraid and choosing courage anyway. The frontier still didn't forgive weakness. The land was still harsh. Winter still killed the unprepared. But there was also beauty here. Community. The satisfaction of building something that lasted. The fierce joy of surviving what should have destroyed you and emerging stronger. Eliza had arrived in Montana territory as a frightened woman running from death. She'd become someone who faced it down and won. She'd claimed not just survival, but a life worth fighting for. A family no one could take away. A legacy built not on money or status, but on courage and integrity and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. And on that frozen frontier, in that harsh and beautiful land, she'd found exactly what she'd been searching for all along. Home.